Okay, in this video I want to talk about another peg of postmodernism, a notion that we can use to get when we put it together with other notions, can give us a picture of what this condition might be. And this one I want to call nostalgia. All right, and I'm thinking of Jerry Herron's essay, Homer Simpson's Eyes. And you know, we can understand a basic notion of nostalgia, and then we'll put some of the twist that Herron said was on it. You can never be nostalgic about something that you have with you at present. So the nostalgia activity always reflects itself away from the now. All right, now in common usage, and you know, I'm sure you've used this term too, we're referring to the past, right? So we look back at some past place or relationship or event or habit, tradition, or thing, and we have arise in us this like a warm, well, you know, it's hard to describe it, but very positive emotions toward it. Okay, in other words, thinking about that thing, recalling that activity makes us feel good now. All right, and to the point where we wish we could go back, right, and experience it again. The thing about nostalgia is that as soon as you have it with you, so you know, it ceases. Well, first, technically to be nostalgic, but usually in our experience, as soon as we drag it from the past into the present, we begin to run into all sorts of snags that reminds us that it wasn't really as cracked up as or as great as we thought it was. Okay, so you know, I might have a very positive memory about something in my childhood, maybe a store or a tree. I used to love climbing trees and tree houses and all sorts of stuff. So I have a favorite tree house. I can think now of the trap door and all that, you know. But I also realize that if I could some way, you know, magically go back there and experience that all over again, first of all, I would be 8 years old again. And I don't know if I particularly want to be 8 years old. I wouldn't be able to understand that this is a nostalgic re-experiencing of an ocean. I would just think, hey, I'm back in my treehouse. Oh, I guess I got to go to school tomorrow. Third grade or whatever. So, you know, not only can you not go back without turning into the person you used to be, and then you just negate the whole thing, right? Because for that person, that moment is not nostalgic. It can't be. It's the present for that person. So you can't do it that way. Let's just again say that you could go back as an adult and experience, but then you realize, well, you know, that climbing that tree was hard, or there were spiders up there, or you know, I remember one time sticking my hand through a nail that was up there, and that certainly, I don't want to experience that again. And getting stuck and having to get someone to get me off the tree, I remember that. I don't want that again, because that actually really hurt. And so, you know, if I were to actually go back as an adult and experience that thing I'm nostalgic for, I strongly suspect I'm going to run into all sorts of elements that are there, that were there, and when it was historically the present, that you know, just aren't all that pleasant. All right, so the thing about nostalgia, excuse me, is that it has to be an imaginary collection of a collection of memories. Okay, so it has to be in your imagination, but that has been polished and revised and carefully beautified, so that those things of that experience that are unpleasant to recall or experience have been dropped away by your memory. So it's sort of a selective recall here, and it's done so that the best of those experiences remain in our memory, and usually the mundane or the trivial or the frustrating have been dropped out, except for the deep suffering. We remember that, and then if it's too deep, we tend to sublimate it, or you know, in terms of say James Glass's work, where he says, you know, we develop psychological fragments where we shuffle them away and sort of repress them in that way. But so we sort of all understand that if we could actually go back to experience that nostalgic notion or that moment, it probably wouldn't be the same. It's something that we want to engage in right now. It as an act of memory. That's what it is. And it helps when we can articulate this to someone else who values it as a meaningful discourse. So thus, in family reunions, these come out a lot. Stories from our past. Usually the best stories. The ones that make us laugh. That's nostalgia, okay? However, you should realize that it's a selective collage of memories that has to remain in the imaginary. It cannot be ever really truly brought into the present. And usually we associate it with the past, but you realize then that the very same term can apply to the future. In the sense of, you can anticipate the future by patching together and scenes you anticipate to materialize, and you patch them together the best way, and that serves to comfort you now. But it has to remain in the future, because you realize as soon as you begin to experience that thing, the actual other parts of it force themselves upon you, and you may not begin to enjoy it so much anymore, right? So, think of the college experience. A junior or a senior in high school tends to, build up mental images of college life, and much of that is composed of exciting and, above average experiences that the student is imagining he or she will have. So, or the student may also be anticipating living away from home, and that's sort of emerging into adulthood, and can you imagine what I'm going to do here and do here? It's going to be great, right? And so we have this, we tend to put up a mental image of what it is, but then as long as it remains in the future, and we can still truly anticipate it, because it's in our offing, we know it's actually coming unless we have a change of course. And, we can have a lot of fun time quietly enjoying the benefits of imagining ourselves as already being successful there, right? And having that sort of... But as soon as you start in, you're like, oh, wow, this is... And many students run into that wall where what they thought it would be like does not actually match up what it is like. And it's discouraging and frustrating. All right, so that's when nostalgia turns into the messy present, and it has a future aspect to it. So for postmodernism, then, nostalgia would be any act that you derive personal and psychological comfort from as you play around in the imaginary of that act. And you can revisit the past, or you can project yourself into the future and be that better person, that better looking person, that more skillful person, as you just sit and fantasize. So the act of fantasy is also nostalgia, all right? Now, you can, because of, again, the screen and the digital tools we have available to us, we can become nostalgic then over our projection in a second life or an ulterior reality simulation, like some of the games that people play online where they actually become a different person and have a different path of life and a different activity. That really, again, in essence, is nostalgia. So I think Jerry Herrin was correct in saying that the act of being hyper about being nostalgic is a postmodern problem. We like it too much. We've learned how to project it in the future, and we've learned how to turn it into digital imagery. So we can really get this thing going for us, okay, in ways that it provides psychological comfort, or it in ways that it creates origins of psychological comfort that never should have been there in the first place for a or that haven't ever been that way in times past, because the proper mechanisms and attitudes weren't set in place correctly for that.